Hello and welcome to Her Money Mindset. I'm your host, Courtney Schweinler, and I am really glad that you're here. This podcast is a space for women who want to feel calmer, more confident, and more aligned with their money. Not just on paper and not just in budgeting spreadsheets, but in real life. We talk about money, mindset, and the habits that we carry that shape the way that we earn, spend, save, and plan for the future. But this is not just a numbers and spreadsheets kind of show. Here on Her Money Mindset, we talk about the emotional side of money, the stress, the guilt, the fear, the pressure to have everything figured out. And more recently, we're also talking about what it actually looks like to release control, trust God more deeply, and steward our money in a way that actually supports the life you're trying to build. Now, whether you're living paycheck to paycheck, you're rebuilding after a tough season, or you're simply just trying to be more intentional with what you have, this podcast is for you. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need to be an expert. You just need to be willing to take the next small step. Each week, we'll walk through practical tools like budgeting, saving, debt payoff, and financial planning, but we'll also get honest about the deeper patterns behind our money choices, the beliefs we learned growing up, the habits we picked up in survival mode, and the ways that we sometimes try to control money instead of letting it support us. My goal is for you to leave each episode feeling less overwhelmed, more grounded, and more confident in your ability to make money decisions that align with your values. Now, before we jump into today's episode, I want to let you all know that all of my budgeting tools are linked in the show notes for you guys, and that includes the budget spreadsheet that I personally use, my debt payoff tracker, and even my mortgage payoff calculator to help you see exactly how extra payments can change your timeline significantly. And if becoming debt free is a bigger goal that you're working towards, I also offer my Mortgage Freedom Blueprint. And this is a set of training modules where I walk you through both the strategy and the mindset behind becoming debt free. This is designed with mortgages in mind. However, the framework can absolutely be used for regular debt payoff as well, including credit cards, car loans, personal loans, etc. And you can explore all of those resources through the links in the show notes. And as a thank you for being a podcast listener, make sure that you use the exclusive code HMM Podcast at checkout for 15% off. And if this show has been helpful for you, I would truly, truly appreciate you leaving a review. It helps more women find the show, and it means more to me than you know. All right, let's get into today's episode. Okay. Hello, you guys. Welcome back to the Her Money Mindset podcast. I know that it has been a while since I recorded an episode for you guys, and I am so, so sorry, but I am back. I'm ready to take on 2026, and the podcast is going to be going back to just one episode per week on Tuesdays for better sustainability for me. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for continuing to listen and catch up on episodes during the time that I was gone. And I am just so grateful to have this platform and to have you guys show up consistently every time I drop an episode, to be here and to listen and to hear what I have to say. You all are truly the best, and I am so grateful for the support that you guys give. Now, this episode has been kind of sitting with me for a while because this is something that I've noticed not just in my own life, but in so many conversations that I have with women who are trying really hard to do the quote right thing, end quote, with their money. So, if you're feeling tired lately, not just physically tired, but you're mentally and you're emotionally exhausted, I want you to stay with me through this episode because there's a good chance it's not because you're doing something wrong, which is what we tend to think is the issue. Now, a lot of the exhaustion that we feel around money doesn't come from overspending or being irresponsible. This actually comes from trying to control everything so tightly that there is no room to breathe anymore. And I know that that might feel uncomfortable to hear, especially if you pride yourself on being disciplined or organized or on top of things or type A. But my hope is that the conversation today feels relieving and not accusatory. Because trust me, this is something that I need to hear, okay? I am talking to you as somebody who is dealing with her own control issues, okay? So this is not me pointing the finger at you. This is me saying, hey, this is a problem that a lot of us have, and here's how to work through it. Because this is not about letting go of responsibility, it's about learning how to let go of pressure that was never meant to be yours in the first place, right? And let me just tell you something. Most of the women that are showing up and listening to this podcast are not careless with money. If anything, they're usually the opposite of this. You're tracking your spending, you plan ahead, you think about the future, you try to make wise decisions. But even when you're making all of this effort, money still feels heavy and it still feels impossible and it still feels like you can never get it right, even though you're doing everything right, right? You might notice yourself, checking your bank account more often than you really even need to, replaying financial decisions in your head after you've already made them and the decision can't be taken back. Maybe when something's planned for in your budget, when you actually go to spend that money, it makes you feel guilty or it makes you feel extreme anxiety instead of relief, even though this is something that you planned for, right? And over time, when you are constantly subjecting yourself to that mental load, it adds up. It adds up, and it's a lot. It's a lot to carry, right? And what's really tricky about this whole thing is that from the outside looking in, this looks like responsibility. It looks like discipline. It looks like someone who has their life together. But on the inside and internally for you, it doesn't feel empowering anymore. It feels exhausting. It feels exhausting. It feels tight. It feels stressful. This feels like you're always one mistake away from everything freaking falling apart in your life and in your finances. And this is usually when responsibility has now become control. And control doesn't usually start as a personality trait. This is something that gets learned throughout life. So, if you've ever lived paycheck to paycheck, you've ever experienced financial uncertainty, or you've been in a position where you've had to figure things out on your own, being in control can feel like a huge source of protection for yourself because your brain learns that being hyper aware is safer than being caught off guard. Planning becomes a way to prevent pain or mishaps or anything like that down the road. And paying attention like vigorously to every detail becomes a way to avoid regret. And if you're telling yourself things like, if I just stay on top of this, I'll feel better, or once I have more saved, then I'll relax. But listen, that's not true because when you get there, your goalpost keeps moving. So once I have $5,000 saved in my emergency fund, I'll be able to calm down. No, because once you get that $5,000, you're going to feel uncomfortable again because now you need 10,000. But nope, now you're not comfortable. Now you've got the 10,000, you're still not comfortable. You need more. Why? Because that type of control does not actually calm your nervous system. It keeps it on high alert and it keeps you uncomfortable. And you can be doing everything right and you're still feeling like you're bracing for impact because when this happens, money is less about support and it's more about survival. And like I said, this is not because you're failing. You can be doing everything right. This is because instead of coming from a place of calmness and contentment and understanding, it's now become a place of fear. Fear is now in the driver's seat. You are not in the driver's seat anymore. Fear is. And there was a season, trust me, like I said, I'm still working on this, but there was a season where I was doing all of the things that I teach. I had systems in place, plans for the future, and clear financial goals. And yet, I didn't feel peaceful. I did not feel peaceful. I remember realizing that even during the good months, I couldn't even fully enjoy them. there was always, and I mean always, a sense of, okay, but what's next? What if something goes wrong? I'm waiting for that next shoe to drop constantly, right? And eventually, I just had to get honest with myself and I had to admit that I wasn't just managing money. I was trying so desperately to be in control of outcomes that I couldn't actually control. And a lot of this comes from my own personal life. If you're an OG listener, you know that my firstborn son was born 3 months early. He's had 8 brain surgeries and he's had 2 eye surgeries. He's had a very long road of medically complex trauma and things like that. And so that, my background with that, heightened my need for control significantly. And then it spread into how I was managing my money, right? Because I was trying to be in control of the outcomes that I couldn't actually control. I was trying to grasp on to anything that I could. I was carrying money like it was my responsibility to make everything work perfectly all of the time. And once I finally took a step back and I noticed that, then it became clear why I was so tired, why I felt so emotionally and mentally exhausted and burnt out. Because there is a huge difference between being responsible and trying to be the source, right? And when you cross that line, when you get there, the good habits, even the good habits, can start to feel like a ginormous burden. They can feel like a huge burden on you because now everything in life has become overwhelming. And this is where I kind of want to slow down because this shift truly, it changed everything for me. And I know that that might sound dramatic, and like I said, I'm still working on it. I am still a work in progress. Nobody is perfect, right? But the shift of control versus stewardship truly has made such a huge difference because stewardship still values planning, intention, and wisdom, and it still uses tools, it still uses budgets, and it still uses systems. But stewardship also understands that your job is to make thoughtful choices, not to carry the weight of every possible outcome, right? Control says nothing can go wrong if I plan well enough. If I plan well enough, everything will go smoothly, everything will go perfectly. And if I don't plan well enough, then it's my fault if something goes wrong, right? But when we shift into the mental energy and the money mindset of stewardship, stewardship says to us, I will do my part and then I will release the rest, right? I will do what I can and I'm going to give the rest to God, right? Because that doesn't mean that you stop caring. It means that you stop having a white knuckle death grip on every choice and every outcome in your life. And for me, this required admitting that my peace of mind and my mental well-being and my energy, it mattered just as much as making progress. And that holding money too tightly and controlling it too much was costing me more than it was protecting me. And this is where faith kind of naturally became part of the conversation in my own life, and not in a loud or performative way, but in a truly very grounding one, because I had to remind myself that provision doesn't start and end with me, and that my worth as a person, my worth as a mother, my worth as a wife, my worth as a woman is not measured by how perfectly I manage every detail, right? Let me say that again because I want to make sure you all heard me, okay? Your worth is not measured by how perfectly you manage details. It's not measured by the amount of correct choices that you make in life, right? And that is a really hard lesson to learn. Now, I want to talk about, just real fast, the cost of control. Because when you get to the point in your life where control has now taken over, this doesn't just drain your energy and your life force, this affects how you show up everywhere else. It shows up everywhere. It makes it harder to enjoy your life. It makes you, like, when you want to sit down, your body is saying, hey, I need to rest. It makes resting feel irresponsible. It will make you feel guilty for prioritizing yourself and your self-care. It makes your progress feel just temporary. Instead of satisfying and encouraging, like you're moving towards a goal, when you grip that control so tightly, progress is just going to feel temporary because you're constantly scared that you're going to lose it all, right? You can be moving forward and you're going to still feel like you're falling behind, even though you're not. And this is usually the sign that something needs to change because money is meant to support your life, not to dominate your life. Let's say that again. Money is supposed to support your life, not dominate it. And okay, you're like, Courtney, great. I hear you. I get what you're saying, but how in the world am I actually supposed to let go? I'm a control freak. I'm type A to the max. I can't be vulnerable to save my life. Yeah, me too. I'm talking about myself here. But how do I let go? Right? Letting go, let me be very clear. Let me be very clear. Letting go does not mean abandoning your values. It does not mean throwing your budget out the window. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. That's not what I'm saying. Letting go looks like choosing not to check your account repeatedly, multiple times a day, every day, when you know that nothing has changed. It looks like trusting a plan that you've already made instead of constantly second guessing it, instead of looking at it again every single night, double checking and triple checking and quadruple checking just to make sure that you didn't make a minute little mistake, right? This looks like allowing yourself to spend money that was intentionally set aside for you to spend without feeling guilty about it. Women, oh my gosh, why do we do this, right? Especially moms. You feel guilty spending money on you. Stop it. This letting go allows you to spend that money that was intentionally set aside without guilt, without shame, without anxiety. This isn't about doing less. It's about being able to hold things with grace. You're still responsible. You're still disciplined. You're just not carrying that pressure that doesn't belong to you. It doesn't belong to you. Now, if you want something more tangible to take from this episode, this is my invitation to you. This week, I want you to take one area where money feels especially heavy. And then I want you to ask yourself whether this heaviness is actually helping you or if it's hindering you. And if it's not helping you, which I'm going to give you a little spoiler alert and tell you that it's not, give yourself permission to loosen the white knuckle death grip just a little bit. Just a little bit. Let the color come back in your knuckles, right? I'm not saying drop it completely. I'm not saying that you've got to jump in and dive in, right? Just loosen your grip. You don't have to let go of it. Just loosen your grip. And over time, this will become more and more natural to you, where then you truly can let it go. And that might just look like simplifying something instead of optimizing something, or maybe just choosing peace over perfection in one small decision. And small shifts like this matter way more than you think. Now, if this episode resonated with you like it resonated with me, because like I've been saying this entire episode, I am talking to me too here. I want you to know and I want you to truly understand that there's nothing wrong with you. You don't need to try harder and you don't need to be more disciplined. You're allowed to be wise, to be at peace, to make decisions, and to be responsible. And you're allowed to do all of these things at the same time. They can coexist. Now, if you want budgeting tools that support you without adding extra pressure, I've linked my budgeting tools in the show notes. And as a reminder, as a thank you for being a podcast listener, make sure that you use the exclusive discount code HMM Podcast for 15% off of any of them. And these are designed to help bring you clarity and peace of mind and to help you release some of that white knuckle death grip control. And if this episode felt like something that you truly needed to hear, I would be so grateful if you would share it with someone who might need the same reminder. And if you would just take the 30 seconds to leave a review about how this episode impacted you or about how this podcast as a whole impacts you in your daily life and in your financial habits. Now, have the most amazing week, and I will talk to you next time.